Let's get our cups up. Toast to the morning word crowd. God bless you and God bless America. Okay, we're in Mark chapter 6. And while you're turning there, I want to give a shout out to our school teachers, to our police and fire personnel, and to our military personnel all over the world. Thank you for the work that you do. All right, here we go. Mark chapter 6. Jesus feeds the 5,000. All right, now I want you to pay attention to this morning. Verse 30. Then the apostles gathered to Jesus and told him all things, both what they had done and what they had taught. Now, this is right after Jesus sent the apostles out. The disciples at that time hadn't been called apostles. They're healing, they're casting out devils, so forth and so on. Now, they come back and they give a ministry report to Jesus. So here's what Jesus says. He said to them, "Come aside by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while. For there were many coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. So they departed to a deserted place in the boat by themselves. Now, the multitude saw them departing, and many knew him, and ran there on foot from all the cities. They arrived before them and came together to him. And Jesus, when he came out, that is, out of the boat, saw a great multitude and was moved with compassion for them, because they were like sheep having no shepherd. So he began to teach them many things. And when the day was far spent, his disciples came to him and said, 'This is a deserted place, and already the hour is late. Send them away, that they may go into the surrounding country and villages and buy themselves bread, for they have nothing to eat.' But he answered and said to them, 'You give them something to eat.' And they said to him, 'Shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread?'" That's basically 200 days out of 360 days. And I say 360, that's what the Jewish calendar is for a year, basically almost a year's wage. "Shall we go and buy a year's wages worth of bread and give them something to eat?" But he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? And go and see." And when they found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. And then the rest of it, he makes them sit down in groups of 50. First of all, God's a God of order. Secondly, is so that they can count how many people they have. 5,000 men, not including the women and children. And when they eat, they were all filled. They all ate. They were all filled. And they took up 12 baskets full of leftover. Now, this is Mark's gospel account. The last verse 43. "And they took up 12 baskets full of the fragments and of the fish." There was leftover fish, not just leftover bread. Now, to get the whole scenario here in context, you need to read all 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Even John has it in his Gospel. When Jesus tells a story 4 times, there's a lot to learn about it. And so here's the morning word, okay? I was going to name it Waymaker and talk about God's provision, and certainly we can see that here. He's trying to show us that he's a Waymaker. But I want to draw out another point here this morning, and that is this. If you do your part in the natural, he will do his part in the supernatural. See, if you do your part in the natural, he will do his part in the supernatural. Now, here's the reason I say that. First of all, we have a lot of people today and a lot of ministries today, sad to say, and we're all guilty of it at some point, of just presuming upon the fact that God is able to do the miraculous, that God is able to do the supernatural, with regards to his healing, his provision, his protection, and so forth. And when we do that, and in doing that, we completely absolve ourselves from any part in the situation. And here's what I mean. There's a lot of ministries saying, "Well, you know what? We're doing this, and we want to do this, and we need you to give money to it." All right? So they are burdening people with giving or coming and serving to do something that they are doing for the Lord, but the Lord never led them to do. The Lord never led them to do. They just thought that it was, God can do anything, so let's just go build this building and ask God to bless it. Now, I want to say something here, and I want you to listen to me very carefully. When Jesus issued the call to follow him, it was the call to follow him. Jesus does not follow us. We do not find projects and ask Jesus to get in them. We do not find things to do and ask God to bless it. That's not how it works. Jesus is at work and he invites us to join him in his work. We do not invite him to join us in our work and then presume upon his miraculous power. Now, I know people have done that and God has graciously obliged us sometimes, but that's not how it works. You can get your fanny in a crack doing that. All right. So let's look here. What is their part? First of all, just exactly what I said in verse 31, here's what Jesus said. Come aside by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while. And they departed to a deserted place in the boat by themselves. He led them. So he said, you guys follow me. We're going somewhere. All right. So the first thing that you and I are responsible for before we obligate God to do something supernatural is we should be following him. We should be following him. We should be following him, because wherever he goes, the power goes. Whatever he does, he's going to work out. Whatever he starts, he's going to finish. Whatever he invites us to do, he takes the responsibility to fulfill it. And that's why when he sits down here, he says, the day's far spent now, and the disciples come to him and said, it's a deserted place out here. It's late in the afternoon. These guys have nothing to eat. You need to send them away. Now, if you go over, I think it's in Luke's version of this gospel, Luke looks at them and says to Peter, Peter, reckon where all these people go and get something to eat. So Jesus's feeding of the 5,000 was his idea, not the disciples' idea. It was his invitation, not their invitation. It was his invitation to them to play a part in what he was going to do. Because Luke said, I think it's Luke, it's either Mark or Luke. Here's what it says. For Jesus said this to Peter, knowing what he himself was going to do. Knowing what he himself was going to do. I said, let me go over here really quickly, see if I can find it. I'm not going to waste the time. I think it's in Luke's version of the. So you follow the Lord. All right. You follow the Lord. So we're with the Lord. He said, come aside by yourself. So we are following Jesus. The disciples are following Jesus. Then there is a humanly impossible situation. There is a task that only God can pull off when he says, now let me stop. Here's what the disciple says. It's late. That's common sense observation. These people don't have anything to eat. That's a common sense observation. And we don't have enough to feed them. We don't even know how much food we have, and we certainly don't have enough to feed them. Common sense observation. But God has already decided, Jesus has already decided that he is going to do something supernatural. So he tells them, make them sit down in an orderly fashion so that they can count them. And then here's what he says, point number 2. He says, do a survey. What do you have to eat? Okay, well, we got this. 5 loaves and 2 fish. He says, bring that to me. Point number 2, bring Jesus what you have. Don't tell him you don't have anything, and don't tell him you don't have enough. Bring Jesus what you have. Point number 1, follow Jesus. When he decides what he's going to do and he asks you to join him, he's going to involve you. Now that just might simply be nothing more than you showing up. But then he might ask you to contribute something, your time, your energy, your talent, or your treasure. All right. So here's what he says. Bring me what you have. Bring me what you have. Okay. So they brought Jesus what they had. All right. He didn't multiply 0. He multiplied what they had. He took what they had. Watch this now. They have it. They give it to him. Jesus takes it. And it says that he looked up to heaven and he blessed it. He took what they had and he blessed it. He took what they had and he blessed it. And then what did he do? Feed the 5,000? He gave it back to them. And he says, now go feed them. And here's what happened. It didn't fall out there in a truckload full of bread and fish. It just meant that as they were faithful, oh snap, here we go. Number 3, bring him what you have and be faithful with it. And as they were faithful to distribute a piece of bread and some fish to each one, that's what they did, a piece of bread and a piece of fish to each one, a piece of bread and a piece of fish to each one. It just so happened that their basket never ran out. Every time they reached in the basket, it was something there. They never looked down and saw this big pile of fish and this big pile of bread. And sometimes we say we're not going to do it till we see it. I'm guilty of that. I'm not going to do it till I see it. And God says, you just bring it to me. Let me bless it. I'm going to give it back to you. And then you just take what you have and you just start feeding them. Feed that guy. See, you're looking at 50,000 people. I'm just looking at one man. You feed that man, piece of bread, piece of fish. You feed that man, piece of bread, piece of fish. You feed that kid, you feed that woman. Next thing you know, everyone's been doing their part, taking their basket and feed. And they get to the end and they said, has everybody been fed? Everybody's been fed. Everybody's full. That's what it says. And everybody was full. Not like that's all you get. They were full. And then it says, all right, now go pick up the scraps. Scraps? Yeah, that sounds silly, doesn't it? Go pick up the scraps. 12 baskets full of scraps. And fish. I call it scraps. It wasn't scraps, it was leftovers. That's what, scraps is what the rich folk call their leftovers. But see, poor folks, we call them leftovers because it's going to go over to the next day and you're going to eat it again until there ain't nothing left. Poor folks eat them leftovers. You know what I'm talking about? And rich folks, they just here's what they say: rake your scraps in the trash can. We ain't got no scraps right here, baby. You gather that stuff up and put it in a bag. We carrying it to the house. We're gonna whatever's left, we're gonna take over to the next day, and we're gonna eat it till there ain't nothing left. But my point is this: you got to follow the Lord. You got to give him what you have and be faithful with what you have. And that's what my job is. That's what your job is. That's the part that we play in the supernatural. And you know what God said? I'll take care of the rest of it. I'll take care of the rest of it. You follow me. Oh, I left out a step. You do what I say. Do what I say. Follow me where I go. Do what I say. Bring me what you have. Be faithful. I'll take care of the rest of it. A lot of times people they say, I'm following Jesus, but they ain't following Jesus. They're asking Jesus to follow them. And God says, do this, but they ain't doing that. They're doing what they want to and asking God to bless it. And then they don't want to use their stuff. They want to use your stuff. All right? And then they expect God, then they burden so many people. Listen, if you've got 5,000 people giving you one piece of bread and you feeding 5,000 people, you ain't done nothing miraculous. You just got enough to do it by everybody contributing some. Do you see what I'm saying? If I go, I say, God wants me to feed 5,000 people. I need 5,000 people to give me one piece of bread, one piece of fish. And then I turn around and I feed 5,000 people a piece of bread and a piece of fish. Where's the miracle in that? Everybody else gave it. But the miracle happens is when you don't have enough, but you've been following God, obeying him at every move. And he says, bring me what you have. And you look at it and you say, it's not enough. And you do it anyway. That's when the miracle comes in. That's when the supernatural kicks in. And I just get, people say, I heard a lady on the radio. I was channel surfing the other day, and my kids were in the car, and there was this lady preaching. We stopped for just a second, and she said, I had 5 kids raising them by myself. And she said, I started praying, God, you need to provide. God, you need to provide. God, I need a place to stay. She said, God, I need food in the cabinets. I need food in the closet, in the pantry. I need your help. And she said, God didn't do it. She said, God, I was struggling. And so she said, I got mad. And she said, God, if you just give me my health and give me some strength and some energy, I'll go do this by myself. And he said, all right, go ahead. And she said, I couldn't do it. She said, but you know what? She said, I said, Lord, I can't do it by myself. And you know what God did? She said, God gave me 2 jobs. God gave me 2 jobs. Now, she was in town somewhere around here because she said, all he let me do was to go work in those people's houses in Woodland Forest. I have no idea who it was, for $15 an hour. And she said, and when I did that, and when I told my children We're not going to be taking them 20-minute baths because we can't pay the water bill unless you want to go get a job. And she said, matter of fact, my children, my teenage kids went and got a job. And she said, I'm going to buy you tennis shoes that I can afford. If you want the high dollar Jordans, $150, she said, you go get you a job and you work for them. And she said, every one of my kids got a job and they bought their own shoes above what I was going to buy. And don't get me wrong now, she didn't make them buy their shoes. She said, if you don't want the shoes I'm buying, you go buy them. Buy what you want. And she said, I set a timer on that shower. And she said, I told them unless they wanted to pay the light bill, to turn the lights off when they come out of their room, close the door. And so they started being faithful with what they had, and God gave them opportunity to go to work. And you know what? She said, we never lacked. We always had what we needed. We never lacked. She said, I never had more than enough, but I always had what I needed. And so here's my point. God can do some supernatural stuff, but you got to be following him, and you got to be doing your part. That is, you've got to obey what he says, use what you have, and be faithful with it. Go where he goes, do what he says, use what you have, and be faithful with it, and he will take care of the rest. I kind of get frustrated sometimes at people presuming that God is going to supernaturally provide them a Cadillac when the Toyota's fine. All right? Or God's going to supernaturally provide for a mission house and the one you got is fine. You just want to tear it. You like the rich man who just tore down his barns and built better. And then I'm going to throw this in. It's not even part of the story because I'm done now. I'm going to throw this in. It bothers me. It bothers me when people, I'm not going to say evangelists, I'm not going to say missionaries or mission, because they out there in the mission field. I'm not going to name names, and I'm not going to specify what kind. It bothers me when ministries are trying to help people who don't have anything, all the while they are growing bigger and bigger in their own ways and means of life. Bothers me. Bothers me. Bothers me when your life keeps upgrading and you're trying to help people who have nothing and you're begging people for money. All right? I am gonna call the name of someone here. No, I'm not. But there are two people that are married that have been missionaries for probably 30 plus, 40 plus years. Live in a very simple, small, modest home. And we were in a conversation one time, and she looked at me, and here's what she said. She said, Pastor Randy, she said, we have made the money. Her husband worked, but they also had a ministry. She said, we've had the money to upgrade our house and to add on to our house and to put in new floors and all this. And she said, I never could do it. I never could do it because I thought about the people I was helping, and I already had so much more than they did. I just could not take my money and upgrade my life and their life stay the same. And so I was so moved. I never will forget that conversation. I was so moved by that. So it bothers me. I'm just going to go and tell you, when I see Facebook and Instagram and some of these other things and people soliciting money, it bothers me. When the income and the standard of living continues to go up for the missionary, all the while they're asking for more money to try to help the poor. Now, I'm not talking about, I'm not trying to talk about their life shouldn't improve while they're helping the poor here. But if you want to help more poor, maybe that's fine a little bit. You know, you need more resources to help more poor. I get that a little bit, but it bothers me, man. It bothers me, and I'm gonna leave that there so y'all get. I've gone too long. Do your part. He'll do his part. We'll see you tomorrow. Good Lord willing, and the saints don't rise. Peace out.